Welcome to the MindSpeaking podcast, where we talk about the human side of data. In other words, data, communication, and personal development. My name is Gilbert Eikelenboom. I'm driven by curiosity, and my aim is to spread insights that you can apply in your life starting today. So, let's do it. Let's start MindSpeaking. Today on the MindSpeaking podcast, I talk with Andreas Welsch. He is a VP at SAP, and he has more than 20 years of experience in the software industry. His expertise is in artificial intelligence and process automation, and he's turning hype into outcome. He's sharing his insights with his intelligence briefing via LinkedIn and in his newsletter. And what we talk about today is how to make AI projects a success, what type of mistakes to avoid, and how to foster an AI mindset. Also, we talk about the role of empathy, communication, and a lot of tips how you can do this in your own organization. So, I hope you enjoy this episode with Andreas Welsch. Hey, Andreas. Nice to see you again.
Hey, Gilbert. Thanks for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation today, and we're going to dive into a lot of different topics. For the people that are watching, they can see your background, and I've not had many guests that have such a fantastic background, so I'm happy to see that in the first place.
Thank you so much. I'm really passionate about getting the topic of AI across, and so wanted to make it as comfortable and as cozy as possible.
Yeah,
and show a bit of personality.
Yeah, fantastic. I think it's going to be a cozy conversation about AI. I see an AI light blinking in the background, or clear in the background, and I'm looking forward. And of course, we're going to talk about AI, but I'm also curious about you as a person. So I would like to hear a bit more about you. Where did you grow up? How was it for you to grow up? And yeah, tell us a bit more about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. So you can probably tell by my accent, although I live in the US, that's not where I am originally from. So I was born and raised in Germany, on the western side of Germany, very close to the border with France, actually only about 2-3 kilometers away. And I've always lived in a kind of a border region. Also lived in the south of Germany, at Lake Constance, which is right on the border with Austria and Switzerland. So lots of beautiful scenery in the Alps, and always different types of cultures. Now I live on the East Coast in the US, near Philadelphia. I would still consider that a bit of a border region, with Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey being close by. Certainly not as the same kind of different countries around, but certainly you'll also get a different perspective and a different flavor. And so, growing up, I had a couple of different things I wanted to become. At one point, I wanted to become a pediatrician, and a bunch of other things. But it wasn't until I did my first internship in a software company, actually, that I got exposed to software, IT, and all of that world. So that was really like in my late teens, where I saw what you can do with IT, with software, and what impact you can have. And that's really set me up on that trajectory, and was just the starting point for me to learn more about all of that.
You also mentioned that to become a people manager, you need more than technical skills. Can you share more about that? How about your thoughts?
I spent a good 14-15 years in IT in my career. That's where I grew up, personally and professionally. So I've had the fortune to work with many great people on teams, and work with many great leaders, and work for many great leaders. But when I saw that I wanted to take on more responsibility, I was kind of hitting a glass ceiling at the time. Nobody else above me was moving up or was moving out. So there were limited opportunities. And so I said to myself, hey, by the time I'm 30, I do want to either be a people manager in IT, because that's really where my subject matter expertise was at that time, or I'll look for other opportunities within the same company. And so that was what I ended up doing, because there were no opportunities in a short amount of time, or short period of time, that I could pursue. So I already knew about data centers and servers and networking, and some bits of automation and scripting. So it was a good way to take that as the foundation and build on it. And I had a fantastic opportunity at SAP, where I currently still work, to build on that, to do what we call a fellowship, which is basically like an internship for a couple of months, where you can join a different department, learn about what they do, but bring your knowledge to the table as well. And that at that time exposed me to the cloud. It was like the early 2010s, mid 2010s, what customers were thinking about, how you build this cloud thing. And again, from there, that led me to working with our CTO. And at the time, 2015, 16, when digital transformation was just starting. What is it? How do you talk about it? Why does it matter? Again, how does cloud fit into that picture? And so then the next steps after that have been similar. So for me, the approach has always been take something that you already have expertise in and that you're pretty good at, and see what other new topic you can add to it and where you can learn and where you can grow. So go outside of your comfort zone, but I would say don't leave it completely. Don't leave it behind. So, build on your strength, but keep learning and keep looking for something new.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that, you need to build on what you already know, right? Your current experience. So maybe one foot within the comfort zone, but also certainly one big step outside of it. And how do you think, because many people would agree, I think, with that sentiment, how do you think companies can adopt such a culture of going outside of your comfort zone and building these new type of skills?
I think what's really key is creating that learning culture, giving those opportunities. And certainly not every company, will have such a program where you're encouraged as an employee to move around for a couple of months, in your career. But it can be as simple as a virtual community, or if you're back in the office, meet, have coffee with other like-minded folks, or just exchange what is it that you do, and maybe what does sales look like, or what does pre-sales look like, and what does a day in your life look like, and I can share what a day in my life looks like. So just get an overall better understanding and see if there are opportunities to collaborate, or if not, at a minimum, learn about somebody else's area and expertise, and see if that interests you, or if it's something that you want to venture into more.
Mm-hmm. And in becoming a people manager, you mentioned, what do you think are some important traits or skills you need to learn as a people manager working in a technology area?
So in one of my last roles, I led what I think can be best described as an AI center of excellence. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not a data scientist. I'm probably not even a data person, or don't have a background in data. But I've done a lot of work on automation, and this kind of thinking is something that really excites me. So I think having a good understanding of the subject is obviously key. So you know what you're talking about and what to look out for, and as you build your team, what types of skills to look for. But I think as a people manager, and I guess even more so, in pandemic, post-pandemic world, whatever we want to call it, next normal, new normal, a lot of us are still working remotely, where we have that opportunity, working in technology. So empathy, I think, is a key one, because we're juggling not only our work life, but certainly our personal life as well at the same time. So not everybody might be available at the same time. People have different work schedules now, especially, right, and have different things on their mind, whether it's not having been able to see relatives or loved ones or friends for a long time, or not being able to go out, or even health topics that have become more, or come more to the forefront. So overall, that empathy, that understanding, I think, is key, but also setting a clear vision of what you want to achieve. And it's I would say it's fairly easy if you're an individual contributor to just join along for the ride and float along. Right? Somebody else is coming up with the ideas, and we just do what we're told, which is one mindset, right? But as a leader, certainly you do want to set that vision. So what is it that we want to go to, that we want to move towards? What are some of the big trends that we're seeing? What's the impact we are making and that we can make? And how do we set up our teams? What are the strengths that we have? Where do we have some gaps, and how can we fill them? Whether it's developing our people in that area, or bringing on additional ones that can complement that skill set. So I think between empathy, vision, and certainly also execution, that's a good triangle.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great triangle, and to create that vision and to communicate that vision, you should use different words than buzzwords, right? Because the link that I want to make is you mentioned a lot of times that you're looking beyond the buzzwords. What does it mean to you?
So, look, buzzwords are there to create excitement. I feel it's like this hype, right? Everything is AI these days. But when you pull back the curtain, is it really? Or is it machine learning? Is it predictive? Is it statistics? Is it rules? So I think being more realistic and more open and honest about it, and creating that transparency of what it actually is really important. And doing that in simple language, so that you understand it, you can communicate it, but more importantly also the person that you're talking about, that you're talking to, can understand it. And a lot of times in data roles, you're the technical expert, but you're talking to somebody who's probably not that familiar with terminology, with these buzzwords. So what does AI mean to somebody in finance? What can it do? Why should they care about it? Well, hey, instead of you having to process incoming payments every day, look through a list of hundreds of items, say, well, I think this one matches that invoice and this one matches it too. And that's a big part of your job today. If we can bring in technology to help you with that, and all you need to look at are maybe the 5 or 10 instead of the 50 or 100 things that come in. If you only look at the exceptions, I think that changes the trajectory for somebody in a specialized role. But giving an example like that makes it also a lot more tangible than the misconceptions that exist around Terminator, Minority Report, The Matrix, and everything that we've been seeing from Hollywood. Right? It's not that. It's a lot more concrete, and it can be a lot more impactful.
Yeah, and I like the example that you give, because it shows how if we make it very concrete, we can bridge that gap between IT or data and business folks who may not have the technical expertise that people in technical roles do. But yeah, I think that's how you can communicate and bridge the gap and get closer to the other side.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I'm also wondering about, because you're talking a lot on LinkedIn about the cultural changes that we need to make, and AI projects, how to make sure they're succeeding, and that we need to treat them differently compared to IT projects. What are some of those cultural changes you think we need to make in companies?
I think the most important one is creating an awareness that AI is so much more than just technology. Technology and data have a very, very strong core and component and are centered to it, but there's so much more around it. Whether it is skills and skill sets, do we have, again, the right people, the right skills? If not, what can we teach them? What can they learn? Where do they find information? It's governance and data. What type of data do I have? Where do I get it from? What am I allowed to do with it? Is there personal identifiable information in it? How do I annotate data? How do I create better training data? What do I do if I don't have enough data? Lots of things around that topic. If you build this for your own company internally, right there, you obviously work with stakeholders in different departments and domains that might not even be as familiar with AI and data and all other things that matter here. So you also become a bit of a multiplier, and you need to create that awareness or that mindset, that AI literacy in the company that will help you build projects in a better way and hopefully a more successful way. And the thing that I've seen work very successfully is if that happens in close collaboration, if that happens in tandem. Because a lot of times, if you are working on data and data science, you're a technical expert again, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly good, right? We need that deep technical expertise, but not everybody can be an expert in everything. So we still find that a mix of deep data science expertise and, for example, deep finance expertise or deep manufacturing expertise remains to be rather rare. So why not pair the two skill sets up? Somebody that's an expert in manufacturing that knows how the business process works in your company, and somebody that's really good on data and has deep expertise, and put them together. So it's almost like a greenhouse effect where they both can grow together.
Yeah, that sounds like a great approach. And how do you think that could work in practice? I mean, I see that it's very effective to combine those two people that have different experiences and different skill sets. What I also foresee, or what I have seen, is that when two people work together with a different expertise or maybe even different personality, it's more difficult to create a very strong collaboration. What is your experience, and how do you think we can do this well?
What I've seen be very important is sponsorship from the top. Then, hey, this is a priority. We need to do this. We want to do this. And we need different people to come together on that team. And it won't be perfect. It won't be perfect the first time, and probably not the second or the third time, but it's a learning opportunity. So there's something to gain for both. And obviously for the company as well, that asks you to run this as an employee. So with that mindset, it's a growth opportunity, and you share a little bit and I share a little bit. And at the end of the day, we're both smarter about what your domain does and how AI and data can apply to it, and the other way around. I think that's a fantastic opportunity. But a lot of times, really, it needs that sponsorship from the top, that this is strategic. This is something that we want to be successful in as a company.
Great. Something I'm also wondering about is, if you talk about AI programs, what are some of the frequent mistakes people or organizations make when setting up these AI programs, and what makes them more successful? Because you touch upon the mindset, the collaboration between different type of people that have different experiences and knowledge levels. What are some of the mistakes that you see organizations make?
So there are a couple of things. Maybe I'll start with the ones with the examples where I've seen this work particularly well. In those examples, the customers that I have worked with in previous roles really defined what the objective was from the very beginning. Why are we looking at AI? What do we want to achieve? In many of these cases, it was around shared service centers, and the finance example that I gave, for example. So naturally, there is concern. There's maybe a bit of distrust. Well, if you put in this automation or this AI thing, does it mean I'll be out of a job in a couple of months because that thing, you tell me, can do the job much better and much faster and much cheaper than I can? So setting the expectation that, hey, that is actually not what we want to accomplish. Yes, we do want more automation. We do want to reduce our costs, but we also need you, and we need your unique expertise, not only to look at the exceptions, but what would you do if, say, 60% or 80% of your time was now freed up because we have this AI thing that takes care of the boring, mundane stuff? And you can follow up with the customers and say, hey, so you were supposed to make that payment a week ago. We still haven't gotten it. What's going on in your business? Are you all right? Should we change the terms? When can we expect that payment? So these kind of things, where you have a much more personal connection and a human connection, and let the AI really worry about the other things. So getting that point across, that it's not to replace people, but rather to augment them and to help them, and genuinely do that. I think that's key. The other part is, and to your question, what should people not do? I would say, do not treat AI as any IT project, as any other IT project, because it is so much more complex. Like I said, the people dimension, data privacy dimensions. How do we get access to data? Certainly a business dimension as well, because we're not just doing that in a vacuum or for for our own passion of seeing how we can get the last percentage points when we tweak that model. Certainly all good and relevant aspects, but at the end of the day, we do want to drive business outcomes with it. Again, increase automation, reduce repetitive tasks, maybe get better insights, give better recommendations to your customers, whether it's like the classic examples like Netflix and better recommendations for movies, or in an e-commerce scenario, better recommendations for products or combinations of products, or upsell. Customers who've bought this have also bought that. But really, it's about the value that you want to create for that business. And when all of that comes together, and maybe even when you want to market that data product externally, and you want to bring in your marketing and sales teams on how you do that, that's really a 360-degree view. So I would say take that approach and make yourself aware that it takes a lot more than just data, which is still at the core.
Right. What I noticed is that you talk about empathy quite a lot. So in the beginning, about when you become a people manager, of course, you need to have empathy towards your colleagues or the people you work with, because they have a different situation, and also empathy towards business stakeholders who are not as technical, and also the people that might be afraid for getting replaced by AI. So I think it's just an important concept, and understanding the perspective of other people. And I also like that you point out that automation and AI is not only a rise in using technology, but actually it can aid the personal connection, because you have more time to have that personal connection. And I think that's a very important point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If we talk about automation, because you spent a lot of time in automation and you're definitely a fan of it, but you also mentioned that just because you can automate something, it doesn't mean you blindly should. Can you expand on that and elaborate on that?
So I see a lot of times when we look at technologies, when we talk about technologies, we're so narrowly focused on what do we have and where can we use it. But again, it needs a different approach, or if you take a different approach, chances are you're much more successful, because you have a much broader field of view and range of view of what you can do and what you want to do. So what I see a lot of folks do is, hey, we do want to automate. Okay, what are the low-hanging fruit? What should we do? What's first? What's second? In getting too quickly into that execution mode, in wanting and needing to deliver value and return on investment. But I think if you take a step back and you say, yeah, well, we could actually do this, but does it add value? Does it make somebody's life easier? Do we expect to see a certain return on investment? When do we see that? What maybe business KPIs and metrics can we positively influence? And can we measure that? I think that overall, to me, is a lot more important and is a lot better, or gives you a lot better chance of success than saying, hey, we can automate this, we can automate that, we can automate that. And then you end up with a lot of waste because you really didn't have to automate it, or there was not even a need for this process, step, task to be there in the first place. So I think take a little more holistic view at what you want to accomplish, and then select the right tools for the job. And sometimes, it might not even be AI, or it might not even be an automation or robotic process automation. Sometimes it's as simple as a rule, or again, saying, do we actually still need that thing? We've been doing that for 20 years. Does anybody still know why we're doing that? Right? And a lot of times the answer will be, oh yeah, John or Bob implemented that when we went live with this or that system. I actually don't know if we still need it or why we have it. So that's also a good opportunity then to clean house and review things again.
Yeah, I like that. I once read about doing a reverse pilot. So instead of introducing something to see if it works, to delete something and take something out and see if people start complaining. And I think for many automations, this could also work. And I see myself in my personal life also trying to automate stuff, or my calendar, or productivity things that I spend a lot of time on, but that actually take more time setting up the automation and all the maintaining it than the benefit I have in terms of productivity. So I even see it in my own life. And I think it's important to not always take a step back and understand, okay, what are we trying to achieve? And also regularly check if it's still valuable.
Correct. That's where I think our excitement sometimes clouds our judgment.
Exactly. What I'm curious about is, because we spoke about AI projects and what makes them successful or what are some mistakes. What is the role of communication skills in bringing these programs to a success? And I think we see several levels, right, from sponsorship down to within teams. What do you think are some of the challenges that we see, or what is important when it comes to communication?
So I think the part that is important is that is adequate to the stakeholders that you're trying to address and that you want to share information with. Certainly at the top management, senior management level, it's about overall high level concepts, business impact that you want to drive. What we said about mid-level or maybe first level leadership, it's about how can we collaborate, how can we bring people together, maybe how can we free up some of their time so that they can collaborate, and what's in it for me, what's in it for you, what's in it for us. And then at the individual level, it's why is this important? Again, why does that not replace your job, but help you actually be more efficient, effective, engaged in the end? I think at a minimum that's key. But there's one story I want to share, one example. So last year we went through a number of pilots internally, things that we wanted to build into our own software products that we sell to customers as SAP. And so it was an interesting time because it was just before and between the summer holidays. People were coming in, others were just about to leave. And quite frankly, we didn't have a lot of time to prep. But we wanted to meet with our head of architecture and head of portfolio, who at the end of the day assigns money to the projects. So we had a meeting where we brought in our data scientists that explained some of the intricacies of the projects that they were working on and the progress we were making. Now, the challenge was that we didn't have a lot of time to prepare. So we said, okay, between your vacation coming in, you going out, let's figure out what we do want to share. The challenge we had that in the end, we ran out of time and we got stuck somewhere in how we optimized the model and what some of the features and parameters were. And we didn't really get to that point. So one of our executives had to move on to another call, and it wasn't really a very successful meeting. So in terms of communication, right, and these things happen, the question is, what is the key information and how quickly can you get that across? And what is the key information for that stakeholder that they need to know to say, yep, that's great, I continue funding this? Or what roadblocks do you see? Where can we help? What else do you need? And, sometimes things are rushed, and that's okay. But I would also say take time. And again, think about who's your stakeholder, what's the story you want to tell, and what's the outcome you want to achieve. And rehearse.
Yeah, the rehearsing part is also important, right? And getting learnings from every interaction, because every time you learn something and you try something, you see if it works, if it doesn't. If you successfully persuade someone or get someone in the right direction. And I think we learn about those interactions every day. What I don't have kids right now, but I will in the future, hopefully. But what I hear from many people that do have kids is that they learn a lot from kids. And I know you have 2 kids, and actually they kind of help you to create content on LinkedIn because they wake you up very early, right? Can you
exactly.
tell about
that? That's a very good way to put it. So yeah, we have a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. And so the 8-month-old is currently teething, not a lot of fun. And so when she wakes up, it's usually around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And so I try to comfort her and try to see that she falls back asleep. But if I don't spend enough time waiting between her falling asleep and putting her back into her crib, she wakes up again, and I go through the same rhythm, same motion again. So what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks, or maybe a month or two, is that I actually sit down and watch her so she falls asleep on my chest. And after an hour, maybe sometimes two, when I know that she's really in deep sleep, then I get up again and I put her in a crib. And what I found is actually that's the most productive time for me to write content, to think about things that I do want to share with my audience and with the world on LinkedIn, because the entire house is quiet, nobody else is up, work is still a couple hours away. And that's where I really find that calm and that inspiration and that peace, if you will, to write that content, think about things that I've seen from my experience that I do want to share with others as well, whether it's as a learning, things you should be repeating, or the other kind of learning, like I shared with that meeting earlier, things that you shouldn't be repeating and should be learning from.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you help everyone turning hype into outcome, right? Because that's the tagline I always see with you.
Exactly.
Looking beyond the buzzwords, and I think it's very valuable, because in the end, we all want to make business impact, right? Not just to talk about AI.
Correct, and I think the more tangible you can make it, with examples or with hard facts, the better of a story it is, and the easier to convey that value and the easier to bring others along it will be.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I also have a more personal question, or it can be business related as well. But what makes you inspired or like your best self?
So really, to me, that comes back to the red thread of empathy. I think that you've noticed as well. I'm inspired by working with people that have a lot of passion, that want to see things moving forward, that want to make things happen, but also at the same time understand where everybody comes from. Because I believe when we do find that mix, we all work best together, and we can inspire each other and bounce off ideas of one another. So really that collaborative spirit, again, with that focus or point on empathy, seeing what others are doing, learning from one another. LinkedIn, I think, is a great example there as well, with creators and experts like yourself. That's very inspiring. That's very enriching to me.
Fantastic. Yeah, it blends in very well with the things I'm doing at MindSpeaking as well, which is all about empathy and understanding the business perspective. So I think there are a lot of parallels between our work, and I see them more and more in this conversation. I would like to switch gears and go to a rapid fire round where I ask you some quick questions and some shorter answers.
Sure.
So let's see. The first question is, what is one thing that surprises people about you?
That I play the accordion.
Wow.
I've learned to play the accordion as a kid. It's something that's stuck with me, but it's not all just polka and oompa loompa.
But you still play?
I still play when I do have time.
But maybe 3 a.m. is not the best time to play. I'm not sure about your neighbors.
Not really, no.
So second question, what's your favorite place to travel?
That used to be New York City before the pandemic. So we haven't been back, unfortunately, but my wife and I used to go there at least once or twice a quarter, sometimes every weekend, because I love how the city changes, even from week to week. There were things that we were discovering one week that we hadn't seen the week or 2 weeks before. So I would say I'm a city person, we're a city person, and lots of walking to explore it and immerse yourself in that city and become part of it for a little while.
Cool. What is your number one place, thing, or person you go to for learning?
That is a good question. I would say that depends on the topic. So a skill that I've picked up last year was much of what you see here: lighting, video, audio, composition, editing. And that's something I've actually learned by following creators on YouTube. So most of the first quarter last year, when I wasn't creating that much content myself yet, I spend watching videos of others explaining how things are done and how they have done it, and what you should be aware of. So I think YouTube and different creators with a good following and good substance in their content can be a fantastic source for that kind of information and learning, and keep it relatively short and non-committal, I would say.
Yeah, I recognize that as well. There's so much good information on YouTube for free, and more and more people start to treat it like Google, right? Many people don't go to Google anymore, but they go to YouTube to ask their questions. So yeah, let's see what it means for your YouTube career as well. Next question is, what are some of the best decisions you've ever made?
Best decisions, I would say, where professionally, I would say where the ones getting out of IT and getting closer to the customer, learning more about the business, learning more about new technologies and how they apply in that context. Personally, I would say definitely the move from Germany to the US, because we feel it's again enriched our lives by so much being here, not just when the sun shines, but also when it rains and when you make friends and when you go to work and all these kind of things. So just getting a different perspective on things and on life and on culture and on your own culture has been a fantastic learning opportunity for me and for our family as well.
Mm-hmm. This question is not on the list, but I'm curious. Do you think people should go abroad mandatorily for 1 or 2 years?
No, I think that shouldn't be mandatory. So if you do want to do it, and if you have the opportunity, I would encourage people to do it. But I think even within your own country or your own culture, there are so many opportunities to learn and to open your eyes for what else is out there. Whether it's inviting people in from other cultures and learning from them, or even within your own country, right? A lot of places we have a north-south divide or east-west. These kind of things. Be a little more open and travel, right? As a first step to broaden your mind. But mandatory, I don't think that's necessary. I think that's a personal thing.
Mm-hmm. Good. And the last question of this rapid fire round is: what job would you be terrible at?
Gardening. So we used to have a pretty nice small palm tree that we've had for 6 years or something, and it survived many vacations. It was at home, we were gone, so we got very creative how we could supply it with water while we're out. Cotton threads put into water cups filled to the brim. It survived, us being gone for 4 weeks or something. But then when our daughter was born a couple of months ago, the rhythm changed of me actually watering it and being able to water it. And so right now there's not too much left of it. So while it survived a couple of vacations, that sounds terrible, but it didn't survive the last addition to the family. But there are other priorities now as well.
Yeah, I wanted to say there are other priorities. So yeah, as the last few questions, I would like to understand, what are you working on at the moment, or what would you like to share about your YouTube activities or LinkedIn or work or?
So I've really started creating more content on LinkedIn about setting up your AI programs, and in November, December, and been doing that consistently every day now since then. And again, I feel if you want to set up that program right, you don't have to have a PhD, or you don't have to have a long track record in these things. A lot of things, and a lot of times, it's already good enough if you have good domain expertise and you want to learn more and you want to branch out and find out what can this AI automation thing really do in that industry or in that domain that I'm very familiar with. So I don't think you need to be kind of a superhero. You don't need that cape to become that hero of your journey. And one thing I will branch out a little more from just text-based or image-based posts is that I will start more live streaming in the coming weeks to bring thought leaders on board, but also more importantly practitioners, because I think that's the real value, right? If you can hear from others that have gone before you or that are on the journey, maybe a little bit ahead of you, what is it that they are learning? What is it that they have learned, good and bad? I think there's a lot of value in that, and I want to bring that out and again share it with the community, so that I think overall we can bring more of these technologies, more of these benefits into our workplace, into people's lives, and really make that impact.
Great. And thank you for being so generous with all the content you're sharing and bringing other people on their journey. And I think it's great to see.
Thanks.
So the last question before I ask where people can find you is, what is one big takeaway you want listeners to take away from this episode?
I would say don't be scared. Right? Roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty in something. The best thing you can do right now is getting started, because there's so much opportunity that you can capture on. Like I said, if you have a good domain knowledge in one area, see how you can tag AI onto that, because then you can learn, you can apply it in that field. You can have different kinds of conversations with different people and elevate your skill set and that skill set of those around you. So that's the huge opportunity I see. There's so many trainings available these days, whether it's vendors or on Coursera and all these platforms, or even YouTube, like we said. It's really about starting somewhere and see how you can evolve that.
Right. Yeah. There's so many ways how you can keep on researching for weeks, months, or years. But yes, of course, yeah, you need to start. Where can people connect with you, follow you?
So the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. Look for my name, Andreas Welsch. Or if you want to get information, I have a monthly newsletter, briefing.com. If you want to sign up for that. It's 3 topics in 3 minutes and on 3rd Wednesdays only.
Great. Very concrete concepts. And I'll put all the links in the show notes so people can find you.
Excellent.
So we're getting to the end, and thanks a lot for the great conversation. There's a lot of things I've heard about empathy, understanding the other side, both the business side and the technology side, bringing them together in a collaboration, what you need as a people manager, and how to bring AI programs to a success. So thanks a lot for sharing all your knowledge with the listeners, and I hope we speak soon. Thanks a lot, Andreas.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Do you want people to listen to your data and increase your business impact? Then take my free email course or do the quick self-test of your data communication skills. Go to mindspeaking.com and start learning today.